This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglin.
Your job, career, your association with something that has brought your life meaning. Do you remember where it began? We go inside outdoors with a marine biologist heavily involved in the effort to safeguard the world's sea turtle populations. She recalls what gave her start. Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Conservation Camp, a high school field trip, the Girl Scouts, and would you believe, Kentucky Afield TV 1993 is next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
The boys were in trouble.
A true story.
And it sunk right out from under us.
Perfect for duck hunting, but not for a swim in the middle of a river.
My hands were so cold in a matter of seconds that I couldn't pop the clip on my waders to get them off.
There's no time to react when your world just sinks out from under you.
3 hunters, 2 survivors, 1 reason.
Your life jacket's got your back.
Your Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife reminds you, your life jacket's got your back, and the backing of sportsmen on winter water everywhere. If you haven't done it yet, do it, or you'll forget. Then all you'll do is whine, and nobody wants to hear you whine. Put your name in the hat for Kentucky elk hunting. Registration is open now. The drawings will be held before you know it. 900 names will be drawn, and yours could be one of them. The only place to register is as close as the web. The Kentucky Fish and Wildlife website, fw.ky.gov. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin. You know, sometimes we connect with old friends, people we haven't seen in a million years. And what's the first question we ask? Without fail, what are you doing now? For as rock solid of a person as they may have been, we just presume time has changed them. We start out doing one thing, and then life gets in the way. How many people do you know who have followed one career their entire life? Is there anyone that time hasn't touched? So we're compelled to ask, old friend, what are you doing now? Kids are pretty good at coming up with lifelong dreams. They want to be a fireman, a doctor, teacher, nurse, baseball star. Are you doing now what you had planned to do when you were younger? The Washington Post and also CareerBuilder.com say probably not. They published a couple of articles independently, but their numbers are very similar, and they say about only a third of college graduates are gainfully employed in a field that is directly related to their major. For whatever the reason, a lot of youngsters don't get to follow their dreams, but some do. And on Kentucky Afield Radio today, I want to introduce you to one who did. Her name is Laura Wright, and back in 1993, we met as I was featuring her in a story for Kentucky Afield Television. Now remember, this was forever ago, pre-Tim Farmer. Dave Shuffett was the host, and I at the time was just a cub field reporter. The focus of the piece was to show the interest in endangered species one Girl Scout was taking in the Louisville area. She was giving a presentation to city officials in Louisville, the Mayor's Committee on Environmental Compliance. Just a high school girl. I met her mother, I met her brother. I would bump into her at Eagle weekends, river otter releases. We all kept in touch for maybe a year, and then after that, decades passed. I had lost touch with this bright, cheerful, confident, nice Girl Scout. I assumed that she had long forgotten me in the process, too. Then, flip the calendar ahead to 2014. I get this friend request on Facebook. I didn't even recognize the name at first, and then I said, wait a minute, this is her. And if you've ever had this happen, you know how you jump for joy. You cannot click that accept button fast enough. And immediately my curiosity kicked in. Where is she? Where had she been? Did she ever follow through on that 11th grade interest in helping imperiled wildlife? So, naturally, my first words to her were, "What are you doing now?"
What I'm doing now, I'm working in Texas for National Park Service. I'm on the Kim Ridley Sea Turtle Project, and it's part of the Sea Turtle Science and Recovery Division, which is the only division like that in the country. I patrol the beaches, I tag turtles, put satellite tags on them, take genetic samples, release hatchlings. Everything related to a sea turtle is what I get to do currently in Texas.
When we met, you were in the Girl Scouts, and I wanted to say maybe a junior in high school or senior.
93, I would have been a junior.
And this was Atherton High School, Louisville.
Yes.
So Girl Scouts, the Gold Award.
It's the highest award in Girl Scouts, and it's equivalent to the Boy Scout Eagle Award. And both of those are the highest awards you can achieve as a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout.
You got my attention with that because you were doing it on endangered species. Mm-hmm. Was that something that was near and dear to your heart, or you just said, oh, that'll make a good topic?
No, it was definitely near and dear to my heart. When we met at the Eagles weekend, I was trying to come up with an idea for my Gold Award, and I hadn't really settled on anything yet. And that was my first time seeing eagles, period, let alone the adults and the juveniles. Interacting with plenty of other people who were interested in the same thing, I just kind of developed this idea of there's a lot of things happening in Kentucky that not everybody is necessarily aware of. And so I could maybe bridge that gap and provide some of the information to your average citizens or students of what's going on with endangered species, and then what are some ways that you could possibly modify your actions or help these animals. And it kind of came out of Eagles weekend and getting out into wildlife and river otter releases and bird counts and other things. And that it kind of morphed into what that was.
On our Facebook page, we have these videos of you on Kentucky Afield television show. It shows a person early on showing interest in the wild outdoors, and here all these years later, I mean, you're actually doing something with it, followed through, and we'll get into more of that. I remember you were talking about where you would take your message about endangered species, and that list included the Boy Scouts. Tell me about that interaction.
Well, that was, a bit different because, my brother was a Boy Scout, but, I was involved with the Girl Scout side, and he was involved with the Boy Scout side, and there was a little bit of overlap, but not a lot. So it was interesting to then be the Girl Scout who was networking with the local Scout troops, and I addressed both Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts, which obviously include Webelos and, Bear Scouts and so on and so forth, and dealing with those troop leaders as well, Scoutmasters. And it was very nice to be able to be that crossover. And Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts sometimes appear to be competitive with each other, but they're two separate entities. It was nice to have that interaction and to deal with a different community. It's a worthwhile organization, both boys and girls, and it's definitely worth the time you invest in it.
Often wondered, when you were giving these presentations on endangered species, of course, you were just a pretty blonde girl from Atherton High School. How seriously were you taken? What do you think? Did you have an impact?
I think I had more of an impact than what I originally perceived. When I was giving my talk to the Mayor's Environmental Compliance Committee at the City of Louisville, as far as I'm aware, no Girl Scout had ever sat with that audience before. No Girl Scout had interacted with a recognized official expert on environmental issues that then reports directly back to the city mayor. And we had a really good dialogue after my presentation. We had a really good dialogue of what can be done, what needs to be done, what's the future of, at that point I was talking about bats, but what's the future of the animals in general. And they had some other questions about some other endangered species at the time. So that was a really good dialogue that got started at that presentation. It also prepared me to be able to talk to a diverse group of audience members throughout my career.
Are you still involved in Girl Scouts?
I'm a lifetime member, and there's a program that I'm trying to get off the ground now at my current position in Texas. Once it gets a little bit more formalized and partners involved, I can give you follow-up information on this, but it is to directly target both Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and not only offer them another way to achieve some of their merit badges, but also to get them involved in the park and environmental stewardship and get them a little bit more familiarized with sea turtles is my main focus. But if they're interested in something else outdoorsy or park related, then we can do that as well. So I'm getting a little bit excited about getting this program off the ground, but it involves a lot of different partners, so I have to get everybody all on the same page to begin with.
We are stepping outside the borders of our state a little bit with a marine biologist. She is Laura Wright, Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Conservation Camp attendee way back in the 80s, where that interest in wildlife has taken her since. Keep it here. My name is Charlie Baglin, and you're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. We are back on Kentucky Afield Radio. My guest today is Laura Wright. She is a marine biologist specializing in sea turtle recovery. Laura, like a lot of people, sign up to go on Eagle weekends. Back in the early 90s, they were going on, and she and her family did just that. Back in the early 90s, bald eagles were still on the threatened and endangered list. They are no longer, but they were then. And she told me that weekend down on Kentucky Lake was instrumental in her career path that she chose in working with animals in peril. But Laura, your interest in the outdoors got a big push even before that, and you told me it was thanks to the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife conservation camps. This was back, 4th or 5th grade? How many years did you attend?
I went for both years. As many years as they would let me go, I went, so it was both years.
Did you get your outdoorsman on? Was it politically correct to say you get the outdoorsman award back in the early 90s?
Yes, absolutely.
But the girl got the outdoorsman patch.
Yes. Yep, and I'm definitely a proud recipient, and I worked quite hard on that. Some of the things we worked on were quite easy for me, and then there were a couple things that I put my mind to and was definitely focused. I want to get this badge, so let me make sure I can do well on these particular activities.
So for anybody who doesn't know what the outdoorsman patch is, I'll explain, or you can help me because you actually did it. The Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife has summer conservation camps where they teach such things as hunter education, swimming, archery, boating, nature study, first aid, some others. Help me here.
Fishing, target practice, gun safety, water safety. The way it was set up when I was there was you got an individual patch for each activity, but then if you successfully completed all of the activities, then you were awarded the outdoorsman. The
week that lasts a lifetime. What you learned at conservation camp, Laura, are you still using in part today anywhere?
Yes, absolutely. Conservation camp was absolutely a big impact in my life, and I would recommend anybody going to conservation camp because it's a ton of fun as a kid, but you learn an amazing amount of things. So now in my current job where I am out in the middle of the wilderness, and it's interesting, it's not just beach, but we do have coyotes and other wildlife, more of a foresty type situation. So you're aware of your surroundings, you're aware of leave no trace and treading lightly. There are hunters out there, so we have to be aware of other people's practices and looking out for other people's safety as well while we're interacting with them.
I want to change the subject a little bit and tell you what I have in my hand. It says Girl Scouts 1993. Maybe I've told you about this coffee mug, but it was given to me by you back in 1994, and I have used it ever since, and I've kept pens in it. I've got a pair of scissors and pencils, and anyway, I have it right here, and I've always kept that. And I've always wondered what happened to her. And I would look back through my calendars from over the years and could not find a phone number, could find a name, but there was no way really to find you. I even called the Girl Scouts and said, I'm a producer of this radio and television show, and I'm just curious, do you have any latest word on where she may have gone? Because she wanted to be a wildlife biologist. In fact, Laura, I remember you said, hey, could I come to the Department of Fish and Wildlife? Would you mind introducing me around a little bit? You did that. Remember that visit?
Absolutely. That was a big deal. Kind of focused my next steps in my life.
You met, as I recall, a young man named Lauren Schaaf, who was the director of wildlife at the time, a wildlife biologist named Mark Kramer, who went ahead to become the deputy commissioner of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So he used his experience wisely. But one thing he said to you was, if you want to be in this business, you might want to get your master's degree. He got a master's degree not because he needed it to do the job, but he needed it to get it. He needed it to be competitive. Are you finding his advice to be true?
Oh, spot on. Absolutely true. The job I currently have, one of the requirements was X number of years or a master's degree. Thank goodness I met both of those requirements. But I ran into plenty of applicants for the same job who hadn't achieved their master's degree yet, and they weren't considered for the job. And like you said, it's not for the job. I didn't have to have a master's degree so I could competently do my job. It was that tool that allowed me to get my foot in the door so that I could, work my way up the chain.
Well, I'm glad Kentucky Afield, I'm glad me, in just a small way, were able to nudge you along. The path is always easier when the end is in mind. And it seems like you knew what the end was going to be early on, didn't you?
I was hoping. I had an inclination. I don't know if I knew, but I definitely had something I wanted to achieve and work towards. And, it takes effort and a lot of struggles to get to where you want to be in your life, but if you can get there, then it's a wonderful payoff.
So today, you're a marine biologist, and the sea turtles has come up in the conversation. Tell me specifically, what is it that you do?
I work for sea turtle conservation. So there are 7 sea turtle species in the world, and every single one of them are either threatened or endangered. The majority of that is due to man-made issues or man-made causes. So I work on the other side towards their recovery, towards their conservation, to preserve these species that are out there in the ocean.
And you do this in Texas?
Currently in Texas.
Currently in Texas. And this is a national park that I've not been to. Is it southern Texas? Whereabouts? What's it called?
It's just off of Corpus Christi, so yes, it's southern Texas, and it's called Padre Island National Seashore.
If I read this right, I had gotten this Facebook message from you. Let me read this. This was a fascinating read. A good portion of my time, you're telling me here, takes me out of civilization. It's where I camp on an island for 5 to 7 days each week, where there are no cell signals, let alone electricity, no computers. Here, a group of us are responsible for down-island patrols, you've called them. Mm-hmm. In this region, we cover 40-plus miles, are basically left to your own devices while you are there. That sounds pretty darn primitive. Yeah, I thought my office needed an update. But
yeah.
Now, describe that to me, really, during the turtle season, your living conditions.
During the turtle season, when I'm scheduled to be down island, and down island is where we're in the back country of the park, we either will be camping in a tent. Sometimes the weather's bad, so I actually have to crawl up into I'm one of the supervisors, so I have an SUV to respond. So sometimes I'll sleep in the car. But we also have a not-so-luxurious cabin that's been out there for a while, suffering from the elements, so it's not the most ideal situation, but at least the roof over our head. But it's an open-air cabin. Whatever bugs want to come in and out, they can do. We either need to do complete camp provisions, and we have to carry in everything we need, so water, food, first aid, what have you, truck it in or carry it in. Then we patrol every single day, and regardless of whatever the weather is, whether it's hot or cold, windy or rainy, you just need to be prepared for the unknown. So we do have a satellite phone if there is an emergency, but because we are so far down island, it's going to take a while for anyone to get to us. So we do need to be aware of each other, our surroundings, our safety, and keep an eye on each other as well.
Well, what kind of hazards are there?
Well, we have, for the wildlife, there are coyotes, there's rattlesnakes, there's a couple other venomous snakes, there's venomous spiders. So there are some wildlife you need to be aware of. We have badgers. But, there's also people down there that you have to be aware of. They're park visitors. And most of them they're out there, they're fishing, they're enjoying the weekend. But they may not have come down island because you need to be in a 4-wheel drive situation with a full tank of gas and probably additional gas with you. They may not have come prepared, so a lot of times we run into beachgoers who didn't come so prepared or had a broken axle or something, so we have to deal with trying to get not only the beachgoers but their property out of down island as well. And then we're considered to be a border park, even though we're several miles from the border of the U.S. and Mexico. So we do need to be aware of that there are sometimes some people that have crossed over the border unofficially, and they're not necessarily a security risk, but we do need to be aware of what is going on around us in the park for our own safety and the safety of others who are trying to enjoy the park.
How long is turtle season?
For Padre Island, turtle season is April 1 through approximately July 15th. We predominantly focus on the Kemp's Ridley sea turtles, but we also get loggerheads and greens, and those turtles nest at night, but they have a longer season. So sometimes we'll run into nests deposited by those turtles into August and September.
It sounds like a 24-hour workday, but when you get off work at 5 o'clock, so to speak, you can't just go home.
Yeah.
How many hours a week do you wind up working?
When it's peak season, so that is sea turtles are nesting, but we also have hatching, so we have the adults and the babies. I can run anywhere from a 16 to 18-hour day. In the off-season, we have cold stunning, which when we've had the cold weather come in and the water temperatures have dropped, because we have residential turtles in the bay, those can become hypothermic and lethargic, so we have to respond to those, and those can sometimes be close to an 18 to 20-hour day. So you try to grab as much sleep as you can when you get a chance and keep going, because it just might take a couple weeks.
We need to take a break. We'll be back with our fishing report, and then more with what one Kentucky woman has done in the protection of threatened and endangered wildlife. Stay with us. You are listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. Bagland back. We're into our second half hour on Kentucky Afield Radio. If there's something about this program you like, maybe you're in Girl Scouts yourself, have an interest in biology, want to become a fish and wildlife biologist or do something to help the environment, and you want to hear the show again or email it or share it on Facebook so your friends can hear it, it's pretty easily done. Just go to Facebook and put in Kentucky Afield Radio in the search box. You can like us. You don't have to, but it'd be nice if you would like us, and you'll get the weekly link of what's going on with the show. You can also go to YouTube. We have a Kentucky Afield channel. Just search for Kentucky Afield Radio in the search box. And we are podcast on iTunes, so find us there. It is time now for our fishing report.
Hi, this is John Williams with the Fish Report for Southeast Kentucky. The month of February means walleye runs, and the walleye should be stacking up in the major rivers of Lake Cumberland, Cumberland River below Cumberland Falls, and also the Big South Fork. Those can be caught on jigs and minnows or even suspending jerk baits. Also, you can find some fish below Wolf Creek Dam this time of year, so give those a try. Elsewhere in the district, trout have been stocked in Laurel Lake, also in Beulah Lake in Jackson County. We have canceled stocking at Burt Combs Lake while they repair the dam. Those should be good to go by this spring, though, and we'll be stocking at that time. Elsewhere in the district, Cedar Creek Lake, the drawdown still in effect. The lake's down about 7 feet. Ramp at the dam is good to use, and the middle ramp should also be good to use. And as always, good luck and be safe.
Hi, this is Kevin Fry with your Eastern Area Fisheries Report. Trout were stocked this week at several lakes, Cranks Creek, High Splint, and Kingdom Come Lakes in Harlan County, and also Fish Pond in Letcher County. Both small lures and bait getting good catches of trout. You can check further trout stockings in February for additional lakes at departmental website. With recent snow melt and rainfall, tailwaters below reservoirs releasing good amounts of water. These areas are good for sauger, walleye, and hybrid striped bass right now. With swift current, these fish will hold near bottom and often in center of flow. Best bets for hybrid striped bass below Fish Trap Lake Dam and muskie below Buckhorn Lake Dam. Most area lakes starting to open areas of water free of ice. With lakes thawing out and new inflow, watch for logs and debris while boating.
This is Tom with your fishing report from the Northeast. Currently, sauger and walleye are doing great below the Greenup Dam. Anglers are casting grubs on lead heads and fishing spoons and silver buddies against the wall on the Ohio side, or from a boat drifting minnows and grubs out near those walls. If you can catch a moderately warm day in the lake without ice coverage, I've heard of some anglers picking up some nice messes of crappie up at Grayson Lake. Minnows and jigs near structure should be your best bet. As is usual for this time of the winter, ice-covered lakes and poor road conditions have shuffled around our trout stocking schedules for some of our local lakes. You can keep up to date on your favorite lake stockings at our website, fw.ky.gov. And also at that site, you can plan some of your next fishing adventures, keep up with largemouth bass assessments on your favorite lakes, locate some new boat ramps and fishing areas within your county, and find new or updated habitat maps for all of our managed lakes. Stay safe and good luck.
Boys were in trouble.
A true story.
And it sunk right out from under us.
Perfect for duck hunting, but not for a swim in the middle of a river.
My hands were so cold in a matter of seconds that I couldn't pop the clip on my waders to get them off.
There's no time to react when your world just sinks out from under you.
3 hunters, 2 survivors, 1 reason.
Your life jacket's got your back.
Your Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife reminds you, your life jacket's got your back. And the backing of sportsmen on winter water everywhere. You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin. We're talking to a young lady who was born and raised in Louisville, a product of the Girl Scouts of America, Atherton High School. And my guest, Laura Wright, was bitten by the nature bug back when she was just a little girl, and she never recovered. She has since gone on to specialize in sea turtle conservation. She lives on Padre Island National Seashore. That's down on the Gulf side of Texas, but Kentucky is always in her heart. If you take a look at the Gulf shore of Texas, from, say, Galveston on down to Mexico, and you enlarge it, you'll see a thin strip of beach there. That's where she lives. And she lives there in the service of sea turtles. It's not exactly a 9-to-5 job.
No, I had worked in Florida for 10-plus years, and I was running my own turtle project in Florida, and the turtles aren't going to do anything on your schedule. You have to change schedule to the benefit of the animal, and whether that be an adult turtle, whether that be an emergency situation, whether that be a hatchling, you have to alter your life and your schedule around what the turtles are trying to do, because we are trying to conserve these animals, so we don't want to negatively affect them by trying to alter what they naturally do.
Right,
we need to alter our schedules around them.
Yeah, you have to live on the wildlife schedule. Where has the marine biology business taken you around the globe?
Well, pretty much around the globe. I've been to Belize. I lived in the Cayman Islands for almost a year.
Cayman Islands, nice.
Yes, very nice. It was rough to leave that one. India. I've been to Australia 3 separate occasions for 4 to 6 weeks at a time. Mexico. There's been a lot of places in and out and around the world. There's a few other places I need to go. I'm going to be going to Peru in February, and that's turtle related. So it's very exciting to be able to see the world, but to do it with something that you're passionate about.
So tell me about turtles in general, the sea turtles in general. You say there were 7 species, and every one of them is endangered?
Threatened or endangered, depending on where the population is located.
What is threatening these sea turtles?
As it currently stands, it's predominantly man-made issues, whether it be incidental capture, so somebody wasn't intentionally trying to capture the turtle, but it was caught on a hook and line, or it was caught in a fishing net, the gill net. Shrimp trawling kills thousands of turtles a year, so we're trying to come up with better TEDs. They're called turtle excluder devices, and they're basically a trap door that we put in the net that allows the turtle to fall out, but keeps the shrimp catch for the fishermen so that they're not having a negative impact on their livelihood. Plastic pollutions, a lot of our garbage that we think we've put in the garbage can and goes to the landfill actually ends up in the oceans, and these turtles are not only becoming entangled in it and their limbs are being amputated, but they also are ingesting it, because as turtles, when they're young, the name of the game is to get as big as fast as you can so you're not somebody else's dinner. So they're going to eat whatever they can eat, and a lot of our garbage appears to be the same native prey that they're used to eating, like a plastic bag in the water looks like a jellyfish. So they definitely are ingesting the wrong things, and that's obviously causing a decline in their populations as well. But what originally caused the collapse of sea turtles is overharvesting. So once the explorers, Columbus and them, were coming across, they discovered this plentiful food source. They took way too many of them out of the population too quickly, and so it caused the populations to collapse, which was the initial decline of these animals. These animals can take anywhere from 15 to 30 years to become sexually mature. So they're traveling around these oceans until they become sexually mature to be able to lay some more eggs. So if you're grabbing a bunch of turtles out of the population who haven't been able to start that next generation yet, then you're going to cause that collapse.
The recovery plan that is in place right now, hopeful? How many years down the road do you think so they can sustain themselves? Is that a doable thing at all?
It is doable if everyone who's involved gets on board. When you're dealing with the conservation of a species, it's not just you and your team. You do have to deal with politicians, bureaucrats, your local governments, other volunteers, other conservation groups who may have a different approach to doing it. So it is a very collaborative, very network-oriented situation. Going back to when I was talking to the Mayor's Environmental Compliance Committee in Louisville, that definitely helped me and prepared me to stand up in front of citywide commission meetings and speak on the behalf of my project and the sea turtle. So to be that amenable individual who's willing to work with all of the vested interests to be able to work towards the preservation of a species, it's a difficult task, but it's not impossible.
Well, you mentioned going to India, Australia, Belize, the Cayman Islands. Have any of these areas at least seen more improvement, showing more hope than others? Is there a shining light out there among them?
Certain populations are starting to show an improvement, and so that's encouraging. But like I said, they're long-lived animals, so it might be a cyclic improvement, or it might actually be an improvement due to our actions. When I was in Florida, I was integral in having critical habitat established for the loggerhead sea turtle, and now they're considering delisting certain populations of the green turtle from endangered to threatened. So that's encouraging. In Hawaii, they're considering the same thing. So some of our efforts are paying off, and some of our efforts we just haven't been doing long enough to know which direction it's actually heading. But, yeah, there are other countries who are seeing similar results, and that's very encouraging. I like working with them, so I know that what I'm working on is also benefiting the rest of the world.
Are you finding yourself as a sea turtle expert, period? Where do you see yourself in 10 years or 20?
If I had my ideal list, I would stay working with sea turtles, but in keeping in mind that sea turtles, even though it's a worldwide population of people working on them, it's quite a small-knit community. So it's very difficult to get a year-round paying job, especially with benefits. So I try to also keep my hands in marine mammal activities. I'm part of a marine mammal stranding network. I tried to, when I was in the Caymans, I also worked on coral reef restoration and a coral reef early warning system, which is sponsored by NOAA, it's shorthand is CRUISE, so that we could measure, there are certain parameters that could cause the coral to bleach, which obviously leads to its death. So I was responsible for maintaining the buoy and recording those parameters to know when we might have an early warning system of a coral situation, disease or sickness, and coral reef fishes. So I do try to have a wider foundation so that if it doesn't work out with the turtle world, I have somewhere else to go. But I do still have my interests back in Kentucky with the wildlife and the forests and the mammals and things up there. So try to keep my fingers in a couple little pots just in case.
Well, when you were a kid growing up in Kentucky, at what point did sea turtles enter the picture? Was this later in college? At some point you said, sea turtles, this is my calling.
Sea turtles was definitely later. I was definitely that kid who ran around collecting all the frogs and the land turtles that I could find, the aquatic freshwater turtles.
Did you put it in your pocket and take it home to your mother?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did she love it?
I was very excited about it, and she was just tolerant of it. When I was in high school at Atherton, we had a biology field trip, I guess you would say, but we were gone for a week during spring break, where we went down to the Keys, and we were at a research institute down there, and that was my first-hand experience of snorkeling in clear ocean water and discovering the marine organisms that live there. And that was instantly what hooked me as far as marine biology. And I came home and I was like, I know what I'm doing. And I was a sophomore in high school. And then once I went to grad school, because I knew I wanted to do marine biology, so I had to go get a master's. One of the jobs at the school happened to be with the sea turtle program, and it happened to be the highest paying job at the time. It was a seasonal part-time job, and so I said, let me apply for it and see if I can get it. And the very first time that I saw a sea turtle hatchling, that was it. I was hooked, and it's been my passion and my obsession since then.
I know exactly what you're saying. When you see something you want to make it part of your life, period. I was in Australia in 2000, and it was on the Great Barrier Reef up by Cairns, and we went snorkeling. And the first time I put that face mask on my face and that snorkel in my mouth and put my head underwater, it was a whole new world. I had never seen anything like it. And that's what you see now pretty much for a living, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And I know exactly what you're saying when you're referring to the Barrier Reef in Australia. I've been on it several times, and it's a whole different world, but it's something about it is fascinating to me, and I need to understand it as much as I can. And so that's my driving force. As much as I can understand it, to better improve the management techniques, or just to understand the species as a whole, to know how it networks and is interwoven with the other animals and the other parts of this ecosystem, that's the scientist in me. I can't stop asking enough questions.
Laura, I have a feeling you're never going to move back to Kentucky. I think you're gone for good now. But is there a part of Kentucky that's still in you? What do you miss?
Oh, goodness. I don't get back as often as I want to, but I would love to be back on a regular basis. I'm still in contact with plenty of the students that I went to high school with and undergrad with, so I kind of live vicariously through them. But I grew up in the Highlands, so I definitely miss the Highlands of Louisville. But I also miss the woods. I miss the seasons. When you're living in a tropical situation, your seasons are not quite the same. So I definitely miss seeing the leaves change. And whenever I do find my way back to Louisville, you feel more at home. You feel like, yep, I'm back to my roots. I'm back to what's the most familiar to me. And I try to keep those contacts, and I get a chance every year or a couple of years to come back and run around for a while. But family's still there, so that's a good reason to come home and go run around Louisville again. But I miss Kentucky, and I miss a lot of things about it. But if it was closer to the ocean, then I'd have the best of both worlds.
What is it that ties all nature together, all habitat together? Is there one underlying theme?
Yeah, well, the entire world is tied together in this one big biosphere, this one ecosystem. And I kind of equate it to a cog in the machine. If the cog were to become compromised in some way, the machine can carry on for a while, and the adjacent cogs will start to suffer from the additional stress. And eventually, over long term, the machine will start to fail. Anything you can do to lessen your negative impact on the environment overall will make the environment a better situation.
Laura Wright is my guest, a marine biologist and research specialist for the conservation of sea turtles. She is currently at Padre Island near Corpus Christi, Texas, but Kentucky born and raised. More in a minute. This is Charlie Baglin on Kentucky Afield Radio. We are back with our final few minutes with sea turtle expert Laura Wright, and it's been a pleasure for me to introduce her to you. I met her back in 1993. She was like a junior in high school. She was with the Girl Scouts, and she was working toward and did receive her Gold Award. She appeared on Kentucky Afield Television a couple of times because of her project with endangered species. We each went better than 20 years without ever talking to each other again, but have recently reconnected thanks to Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. And her story is worth telling. Her career in marine life has taken her around the world. For a piece from the Bardstown Road, the Highlands area of Louisville where she grew up. You know, when we talk about turtles, somebody might ask, what do they matter?
When you're talking about amphibians and reptiles, frogs and turtles, so if something's going wrong in the environment, you'll see it in them first before it magnifies up to the human level. There are other states where everything, as far as a turtle or as far as a frog or a lizard, is endangered. So part of it is habitat loss and development that we've done. Part of it is chemicals that we wash into the waters where the animals live. But part of it also is, are we collecting the data sufficiently and correctly? Are we collecting enough data that actually tells us what's going on with animals? And some of that's quite difficult, especially when you have an animal who doesn't want to cooperate with you.
Sea turtles, are they also bioindicators?
Absolutely. They are the largest turtle species in the world, but their foraging is on the lower levels. So green sea turtles forage on seagrasses, and loggerheads forage on crustaceans and mollusks. So they're eating the lower level chain of food organisms. If there's something wrong in that chain, you'll see it in the turtles before you see it in people. They're definitely something to tell you what's going on with the environment before it can become a problem for us.
Laura, clearly you've done well, and you have wanted to do well since your earliest memories. And back when you were on the TV show with me in the early 90s talking about bald eagles and endangered species, somebody's going to be listening to this show and say, I'm in middle school now, or I have a child in middle school, or in high school, or I went to Atherton myself. What's your advice to somebody young, looking ahead? Is conservation, like you have done, something you really want to point them towards? Is it a viable option?
It's definitely a viable option. If that's what their interest is, if that's where they feel drawn to, then, on the parent side, if the parents can encourage that, if the parents can provide opportunities or open doors for experiences to help that child learn and develop where they want to go in their life, that would be excellent. On the child side, I would say, even for that child who's very shy and just kind of sits in the corner at class and it's really quiet, try new things. I know new things can be scary, but try new things and see what's out there. This is a very large world, and there's so many different things that you can be involved with, whether it be just as a hobby or actually for your career. I would definitely say try new things. If I hadn't had gone on that field trip with school in Atherton in sophomore year of high school, I probably would be on a completely different path. So I very much thank my teachers at Atherton for allowing me to have that experience, and for my parents for letting me go with school for a week down to the Keys when I'm 15 years old.
Do you have a favorite teacher you want to say hey to?
Yeah. Richard Giedig, he was basically my mentor in high school, and I kept in touch with him while I was doing my undergraduate work for biology and research and that kind of thing. And I heard that he might be in administration of the high school now, but I'm not sure that he is. I think he's a vice principal or principal or something. But, yeah, Richard Giedig is absolutely the one who opened my door as far as what I could do in biology and science and conservation, and then for the marine biology world.
So we can't close the show without you getting one more plug in for the Girl Scouts. I know it made your life and set it in a direction that you'll always appreciate. Mm-hmm. What can you say about getting a young girl into the Scouts?
Encourage her. We had an active troop, so you need to seek out an active troop. You need to seek out a troop that has leaders who are interested in opening opportunities for the interests of those girls. If you're just going to get together and hang out once a week, well, that's okay, but that's not going to expose you to all of the different options you have growing up and that potentially could become your life later on. So find an active troop. And if you don't have one near you, that you can be a troop on your own, but contact a local council, a local Girl Scout council, and they will guide you in being able to achieve those things. I was lucky enough when I got my Girl Scout Gold Award that I also received a full tuition scholarship at the University of Louisville. So I not only got my Gold Award and figured out what I wanted to do with my life, but I also then got free tuition at a school, at a college. So it can pay off in a lot of other ways that you would find unexpected to begin with. If the outdoors isn't your thing, there's plenty of other things. We went to the Center of Science and Industry, which is in Columbus, Ohio. It's called COSI. And, yeah, I focused on the science part, but there's reading parts, there's industry, there's math, there's history. There's plenty of other things you can do in Girl Scouts. It doesn't just have to be outdoors. Girl Scouts is definitely a worthwhile investment of your time if you can get into an active troop.
You have impressed me beyond words. I'm glad you followed through on a high school dream. You've done well with it, and I'm just so thrilled to have been a teensy part back in the day.
Oh, thank you. No, you definitely helped out a lot. Everybody who decided to give me some time when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do was absolutely notable and wonderful to get me to where I was going. This isn't something you do on your own. This is something that you have a lot of support and a lot of strength in your foundation to be able to get you to where you need to be.
And high school people everywhere have followed their dreams. You're not the first, but you're the first that I've been able to really track over all these years. And I think it's neat that you found me and let me know what you're doing, that you actually did it.
It's funny because, I think I told you, my mom and I were chatting on the phone, and we were just kind of reminiscing. And I think what I was doing was updating a resume or something. But anyway, somehow another conversation came around, and we were both like, I wonder what Charlie's up to. I don't know. Let me see if I can find him. And so I just automatically just went to Facebook because I thought, well, let's just start there and go from there. And you actually weren't that hard to find. So, yeah, that was really cool. Will do, absolutely. Yeah, and if you need anything else from me, or if anybody needs a follow-up, or they want to talk to me about, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, getting into environment, whatever, feel free to give them a connection.
It has been a good hour. I've taken those videos, and I put them on Facebook of Laura back on that Kentucky Lake Eagle Weekend. It was back in like 93, 94. Worth taking a look at. We are out of time. This is Charlie Baglin inviting you to join us in a week, and we will go inside, outdoors again, right here on Kentucky Afield Radio.